yeah, well, it should be fine. All right. Hello, everybody. So I believe we are live. If you can see myself and Stephanie, Stephanie is in an incredibly beautiful place. I will be focusing her screen soon so you guys can just admire the scene. I, on the other hand, am freezing my butt off here in Queens, New York. But so for anyone who, hasn't come to one of these before, my name is Autumn Bernier. I'm the founder and CEO of Skill Crush. We are an online education company whose mission is to help our students transition from non-technical careers into technical careers. And we have a particular focus on, anyone who's been sort of marginalized, as we like to say, historically in tech. So we're talking about women and people of color and, LGBT and gender non-binary. And basically, if you're not even if you are a white guy, we are here for everyone. We really, really, really are. But anyways, I'm super excited to introduce my very special guest. Her name is Stephanie Helvin. She is a graduate of our program, and she's a graduate of the Get Hired program, which has only been in existence for a little over a year. And she is coming to us from beautiful Costa Rica. And I'm just so excited to really give the floor to her and have Stephanie tell us her story about transitioning careers. I think you took a couple of different sort of transitions, and we are excited to hear all about that. And then, our plan for this chat is to just really have it be casual and sort of flexible. So please put questions in the Ask a Question module, which is like right here, I believe, if my pointing is going correctly. And we are going to do our best to answer everyone's questions. I will also do my best to keep up with the chat. And that's really it. Otherwise, we would love to just start off by hearing where everyone is calling in from. It's cold in Atlanta, apparently, Jasmine is saying. But yeah, so Stephanie, I would love to have you start by introducing yourself and giving everyone a little background on you and how you came to be on this webinar.
Sure. Well, my name is Stephanie Helvin, and I went to school for visual communication, but also education, and I graduated with an education degree. And so right out of college, I got a job teaching, and I taught for altogether 20 years. I had a young son, and so it was really great to be with him and have the summers off with him, but also that feeling of helping other people and kids in that learning environment doing something good. And then my son grew up and left the house, and it was one of those times where you're like, okay, what do I want to do? What do I want to do? And so I ended up kind of trying to see what Costa Rica is like, and I ended up staying here. I got yoga teacher certification, and so for a while I taught yoga. I taught adult art classes. I did fine art and commissions. And then with the pandemic, I thought, I really want to do something different. I want, that was like my time to kind of do me. But then I was like, I'm not getting that sense of helping, of being part of a bigger community. And so I started, took the Skill Crush courses, and I started with the coding, and I got to JavaScript, and I went, okay, let's go to the other. And at the time it was visual design. So I took the whole visual design course, and then I took the UX UI add-on packet. And that's when I was like, oh, this is it, because this is what I want to do. It's helping people. It's going to take my teaching of breaking things down and stepping them and turning that into flows that people can actually use, and testing, talking to people, learning that psychology, understanding the visual components. I'm like, this is everything all together. This is perfect. And so I finished up the course at Skill Crush, and then I started freelancing, building my portfolio, and taking other courses on the side to get more and more experience. And then I guess it was this October, so a year ago, I started applying, and I applied to almost 200 jobs. I looked at it today, and so almost 200 jobs, 9 interviews, and then I got the job, my dream job, in February. And so it was from October to February that I was job searching, and I've been at Bloom Growth now since February, and I absolutely love to go to work every day. It's perfect.
All right. So that's great. And now we're done with our webinar. Just kidding. Okay. So I love the story. So can I just fill in a couple of details? You were in Ohio. Did I make that up?
I was in Virginia.
Virginia. Okay. I don't know where I got Ohio from. My apologies. Okay. So you were living in Virginia and then you decided, I mean, okay. So I have a 3-year-old. The idea of him going to college terrifies me. So I can only, yeah.
Huh?
So your kid graduates, goes to college, you're in Virginia. What sort of, yeah, that was when you decided to transition to Costa Rica, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then
well, first it wasn't a complete transition, but it ended up being one.
Okay. So first you were just kind of trying out Costa Rica, or yeah.
Okay. So it looks like the video is a little choppy. Maybe I should run to that other place. If it's still choppy, it's very choppy. I'm seeing on the comments.
Yeah. It's okay for me. But do you want to run? You can do that.
Okay. So if
you think it'll be better,
just give me about a minute. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right.
Okay.
So Stephanie's going to be right back. And in the meantime, I'm just going to encourage everyone to yes, so she's going to reconnect, to put any questions that you have for Stephanie now that you know her story. What I was going to say was, there was a question that I saw in the chat, which was that it was about 5 months. And I think that's right. I think it was like a little over 4 months was her job search. Georgianne is telling me that time goes fast. I don't want to hear this. Yes, and of course, there's slight downsides to living in Costa Rica. One of them being that that maybe your internet isn't perfect, but she still manages to work remotely, so it's awesome. Cool. Yeah. So how many of you all, I'd love to hear a little bit, how many of you are currently students at SkillCrush, or how many of you are just considering classes with SkillCrush? While we wait. Okay, awesome. Lots of current students. I love it. If you're a current student, I'm excited because Stephanie has a lot of really good insights to share. About her experience. Okay, it looks like she's joining us. All right. Oh yes, this is way better. Not as beautiful, but better.
Wonderful.
All right, cool. Yes. Okay, cool. All right. So we were talking about, okay, so you decided to move permanently to Costa Rica. And then I guess the question that I have is, so you were working as a teacher in these different contexts, teaching yoga and art and things like that. And you wanted to do something that, I think, yeah, you felt like a part of a community and more continuous sort of thing. Why tech?
Well, I had some experience doing graphic design before, and okay. I had actually freelance graphic design while teaching earlier in the career. And so I was very interested to that design part, but it's almost like that's two-dimensional at this point. And, yes. And the UX is where it's almost becomes like this three-dimensional flow and game. And so it just seemed like a natural extension.
Okay, interesting. And was there any hesitation on your part? There was any part of you that was like, I'm too old to do this? This is, the tech industry is not for me. I know I'm saying this because I know that this is something that a lot of people worry about.
No, once I actually once I read and understood what UX was, I was like, no, this is for me. I'm going to do this. And that was,
It was just such a good sort of fit for you. Yeah. I mean, I love UX, so I totally understand how you could feel that way. Okay, awesome. Yeah. So then talk to us a little bit about, so you did the program and then you did the UX add-on. Mm-hmm. And then actually remind me, so if you started the job search in October of last year, you must have been sort of one of the first people that's pretty early in the get hired process. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So what was the decision like to actually make that investment and do that? Like what sort of inspired you to take that plunge?
Well, at that part, is the get hired something separate now? At that part, it was part of.
No, it's part of it. Yeah.
Okay. And it was changing actually at that time. They were developing and then redeveloping. Yeah. And so that was, to me, that was the best part because I had no real clue. Like I could learn the skills and I knew how to do it, but I didn't know how to put myself out there. I didn't know how to present myself. I didn't know how to write an effective resume or build an effective portfolio. And so that was this huge chasm. And I remember at the time taking 20 years of teaching and putting it into 3 bullet points was just like, what am I doing? This is just so weird. This is never going to work. And then after I was hired at Bloom Growth, I had the opportunity to help hire not only another UX designer, but also a product owner. And so I was looking at their resumes and I was like, oh, I understand now why it's like, boom, boom. It needs to be very simple and to the point. And because you're going through so many. And so it's almost UX for the hiring manager.
Interesting. So, yeah. Yeah. Do you feel like it just felt like it was so little space given to this like immense period of time in your life?
Like, okay. Can you reframe that? I don't think I understand.
Oh, I'm just like confirming that like for you, it was like this feeling like it was like this tiny little, it was like 3 bullet points. That's all it was devoted to 20 years.
Oh, yes. Condensing. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I just wanted to I'm going to look at these, the questions. Okay, this is interesting. So Janine is asking, hi, Stephanie, I'm a fitness trainer, Pilates instructor switching to UI UX. What do you think helped you most in getting hired for your job? And I think another way that I would phrase that question, because we actually do have a lot of teachers also who transition. And how do you think about like, well, one of the concerns that students often have is sort of like, are any of my skills transferable? Like, am I starting from scratch? Was your experience that you were starting from scratch, or, were you able to sort of, draw on experiences that you'd had before?
I think you definitely can draw on experiences that you have before. I think that as far as applying it to UI, UX, when you teach, you're breaking things down into smaller steps, and you're seeing how the kids react to it, and based on those reactions, you're reformulating, and you're always kind of iterating on your lesson plan. And so you can definitely, there's correlations there. I think there are a lot of correlations though on the softer skill set, that you're open to learning, that you're flexible, that things can change and you're going to roll with it. You're not as rigid as, say, some of the other professions might be. You have that empathy, because probably you wouldn't be a teacher if you didn't have empathy. and so there are a lot of transferable skills. Definitely.
Do you feel like, and maybe it was just as simple as like at the company that did hire you, they did value it. Did you feel when you were interviewing with places that like they valued that experience that you had had before?
I think they do, but you have to explain it. I think I was fortunate with Bloom Growth that my lead designer, Emma, was also a teacher before. And so she understood it more innately because she's been through the process. But I think you almost have to kind of sit down and kind of go, okay, this is a skill. This is a skill, that is transferable. And then when you interview, you have to make it clear, because somebody who's not a teacher might not make those connections automatically. But then once they hear you say it, then they're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. That does apply. You're designing learning experiences.
Yeah. I think you make a really good point, right? That it's like you do have transferable skills. You can bring so much to the table, but the onus is on you to articulate that to the interviewer, not, they're not going to do that work for you. Yeah. We have a question here from Lee who's asking about how to put, like, what sort of your learnings were about how to put together a UX portfolio.
Okay.
And do you have any sort of tips or insights that you have picked up?
Well, try to, just from looking at other portfolios, being the other seat, would be to try to do kind of different case studies than what everybody else has done. And so try to find freelance jobs so that you can get that experience working with other people and with stakeholders. I actually would like, I've got to redo my portfolio now just to have it up to date. And I'm thinking about doing it in Figma, but I'm not saying that's something, that's just me. That out, and then you don't have to learn the web part if that's not what you're doing. ADP List is a free mentoring service, and they will do portfolio reviews. If you do that, I would say just doing it like a UX project and getting several different portfolio reviews before you change it, because I made that mistake. And so I do one thing and they give me some changes. I make those changes and I go back to another person. They'd be like, well, this and this and this. And I make that. And pretty soon I kind of like had this Frankenstein portfolio.
Yes.
So I would say, take your time. You don't
Yes.
have to make the changes just because they say.
Yes. I think I've heard the term feedback whiplash. And I think that's a really good one. Yeah. You have to be careful of that. Okay, this is actually a really good question that I hadn't occurred to me to define, but somebody's actually asking you to define what UX UI is. And I think actually this is a good also segue for you to talk a little bit about what it is like you do on a daily basis.
Okay. Well, your UX is designing user experiences, and that can be with any sort of software. And so it's how people move through the software, what happens, where do you go, where do people naturally look to go? Because, when you get on software these days, there's not written directions like you push here for, sometimes you get that, but they're very short, succinct. And so it's creating those user experiences. So what I do on a given day just kind of depends. We are redesigning the software based on user feedback that we've gathered. So we're adding things and kind of taking things away, making things work smoother. And we do that by ideating on what should be there and then testing that with real users. There's different ways you can test. You can interview people. You can have remote interviews where, well, the company is all remote. So the interviews can be like through Zoom, or it could be remote where you don't get to talk to them. You could have different tests like surveys or maze where you can embed prototypes to get an idea of what's going on and what people actually are doing. So then you take that feedback and you iterate on that, and then you get to where you get a final piece. And then, so you might be doing any one of those stages during the day. You might also be talking with the engineers, and you might be, say, they might come up with a hole in the design. So then you have to kind of work a design to fix the hole, or there might be something missing. We've also been doing different meetings with like marketing and sales, so that way we all work together as a strong team and we all understand where everybody's coming from. And so the days are very kind of varied.
That's awesome. I was going to ask you a question. Now I forgot. ADP List. People are asking what that was. And actually, I'd love for you to talk about that more. How did you find ADP List? So ADP List is, do you want to just start by explaining what it is? I'm actually not familiar with this. But...
on like a Google search, and then I was like, what is this? It can't be free. And it's free, and it's mainly for UX UI, but I think there's some other things in there. You have to check it out. And it's where people mentor that have been in the business for a while, and you can choose a mentor and you can set up a time. Now, granted, there was a lot of switching times, but what I did when I was really giving that final push, is I set up a time every day to meet with somebody, whether it was just to talk about what a day is like in the life, or to get portfolio feedback, or to do a mock interview. Basically, I wanted to spend time with these people already in the field, so I can learn their jargon. I can learn how they are, what difficulties they face, you know, what they can tell me to watch out for. And it also got me like using the interface more, getting more comfortable with video conferencing. And so that all helped a lot.
Yeah, this is amazing. So every day you had and how long would these sessions normally be? Like, how long is the thing?
Yeah, you could just keep signing up.
This is amazing. I'm like, how did I not know about this? I want to do this. That's so cool. And talk to us about that experience. Like, what did you learn through that process that you wouldn't necessarily have known?
I think it just helped me when I was actually interviewing to not be so nervous. And it helps you to not be nervous if you can learn to overcome that in an interview, because then you're more personable. And what I've learned so far in my experience is, you know, when you're in a UX team, at least the way we're really working together all the time. And so you really want somebody that you could get along with. And, you know, certain skills, well, people pick those up. But, you know, you got to be somebody, you know, you have to be able to show enough of your personality so people know who you are. And you kind of know who they are, because you're interviewing them too, because you're going to be spending 8 hours a day with these people. So, you know.
That's true.
Yeah.
Did you run into any challenges being in Costa Rica? Was that like a deterrent? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, a lot of companies, even though my permanent address is in Virginia, a lot of companies only want to hire within the United States. Now, Costa Rica does have a type of visa that is a remote working visa. So they do have that. It's not the visa that I have, but they do have that. But a lot of the jobs were in the United States. And so that would be a fair amount. When I would get like a rejection notice, it would be, we're sorry, but you know, you're not located where we can work. But there were a lot of remote jobs open at the time.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. Let me take a look at the questions. Victoria is curious how long this all took for you. Like, what was the time between deciding that you were going to sign up for Skill Crush and do this, and then to actually getting a job? Like, I know that it was October to February between when you started searching and when you got the job. But what about if you go back to when you first decided to pursue this?
Probably about a year and a half. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's a very common sort of time frame, about a year to a year and a half for our students.
Yeah, because you learn and you're building that portfolio, and then you're getting the job experience and all that stuff.
Yeah, totally. Steve is asking a question, which is, have you taken any other classes besides the one from Skill Crush? And I think your answer is yes, because you actually offer or put together an amazing doc of resources for us to share with everybody. But yeah, so talk about that experience.
Well, there's a couple that I definitely recommend. One is Bring Your Own Laptop, and the professor's name is Dan. He's awesome the way that he teaches, and he's got classes like in XD, Figma. He's got some UX design classes. He also, I did a Bootstrap class from him, and then they've got the regular Photoshop, Illustrator, stuff like that, which I actually don't use, but I took, but I don't actually use them in my job. The Interaction Design Foundation is a really good resource. They teach differently than Skill Crush, but they have a whole variety of different UX classes, and some of them are a little bit more particular, a little bit more honed in. Really like them. Right now I'm taking one in creativity. It's really pretty awesome. And they're actually Udemy, there are 2 courses. They're hard to get through, but they are Psychology of Web Design. The guy is he has a very thick accent, but it's interesting. But it's like he'll do the lesson, and then he recaps the lesson, and sometimes the recap is about as long as the lesson. So you have to just on it, and once the lesson's over, just skip to the next one. But it's really a lot. It's like a university course, like a solid course. So yes, I did a lot of outside, and then of course reading books. There is a book that's in the little resource guide that
which we will share after the webinar. Yeah.
Yeah, by this guy. I think his name is Vi. He was on YouTube a lot, but he wrote a
Okay.
book about breaking into UX, and it was very helpful. Also, the other one, if you just articulating design decisions, is really good. It's really good for explaining what you're doing. Yeah.
What do you have any thoughts about something that we were discussing internally was sort of like you clearly are a voracious online learner is what I'm getting from this conversation. And I guess to that extent, like, do you have any sort of suggestions or tips for people? Because I know that's something that does scare people a little bit about signing up for an online course is like, will I be able to stick with it when I don't have that accountability of having to show it up in person? How do you finish all these classes, Stephanie? What do you do?
I'm just a little weird. I just kind of go for it. Being a teacher, I'll do anything for a star. So I'll set myself up a chart where I can give myself a star and make it attainable. Like just do 20 minutes, do 20 minutes a day, give myself a star. Yeah, I got it.
Do you literally make a chart with the star? Okay, guys, she literally... Yeah, no, but I think these things are important, like I think they sound silly when you say them out loud or describe them on a webinar to hundreds of people, but they really do make a difference. I think this is so important. Yeah.
Well, in Skill Crush too, you can talk to an instructor, like you would email an instructor and they get back to you really quick too. So that was very helpful to me because I was, UX came very, very easily, but the coding, not so much. So it was wonderful instead of just getting stuck and being like, to be able to get to reach somebody and to have that helped keep me going. Otherwise, I think I wouldn't have gotten as far as I got in the coding.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so yes, you took a lot, or you have. I mean, and it is like that, right? Like you can never stop learning the second you stop. I mean, there's just so much to learn, and it's changing faster than anyone can really keep up with. Okay, so Mignon is saying that he signed up for Skill Crush a long time ago, and then sort of got off track, and then needs to get motivated to start again. So, do you have any tips for him or for them?
Yeah, just say, okay, I'm going to do 15 minutes, and maybe the first day is like getting your workspace ready. Just go easy, and then what you just tell yourself, okay, I'm just going to do 5 minutes. Because usually if you get into something for 5 minutes, even if it's something you don't want to do, you get into it and you'll just keep on going. And if it feels like there's this big barrier in front of you, you're not going to want to do it. But if you're like, okay, I can take this whale and I can put it in little tiny chunks. I'm just going to take a chunk at a time. And don't worry about the speed that you're going, because if you're going forward. You've got the momentum. And once you're in motion, you're more likely to stay in motion and hopefully pick up that momentum and be able to take on more. But be gentle with yourself at first and just start with little bits, just little bits.
Yeah. I think that's perfect advice. Were there any, so you said that you got 9 job interviews, right, out of 200. So that's not an amazing ratio, right? Objectively. I mean, it's not terrible. Like I think 2% is normal. We try to aim for, 10 to 20% interview to job ratio for our students. How did you sort of manage that? Because that must have been challenging at moments emotionally.
Well, part of it was knowing that being in Costa Rica, a lot of these jobs that I was applying for, I didn't know if I was even going to be, considered. And so I assumed that.
So actually, it's probably a freaking great ratio given that.
Yeah. And two, at the time, I think Stephanie was working with me, and she was like helping.
Stephanie was the career coach. Yeah.
Yeah. And she was like, just keep on going, just keep getting things in your pipeline, just keep going. And that I really found afterwards was very helpful, because even if you had one interview, instead of being like, oh, I got an interview, like, okay, I got an interview, but I got another one, 3 days from now. So, you kind of, it kind of helped you going into the interview, not to be like, oh, this is my one chance. And doing this number and just being like, yes, no, yes.
Yeah. 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 How about the like, because Stephanie was, I mean, and this is what we still do, the 30 jobs a week, which I'm guessing is how you got to that beautiful 200 number. How is that process of sort of getting used to applying to that many jobs?
That was a little hard. I think one of the biggest things was when you sending the reach out emails, like I would just get terrified that I'd like do something wrong or not put the right thing in.
Yeah, confuse the email. Yeah, can you actually describe what that is so people understand? Yeah. When you say reach out emails, what do you mean by that?
It's one of the strategies. I don't know. Do you want me to explain this?
Yeah, absolutely.
Where when you apply for a job, that then you try to find who your hiring manager is going to be, and you try to send them an email kind of introducing yourself and showing that you're enthusiastic, and then you follow up on that.
Yeah, so this is in addition to submitting the application. You dig out someone's email address and you send them a cold email. Yeah. Was that hard to do at first, or how did you sort of?
The first couple of ones, yes, because I felt like I was being pushy.
Mm-hmm.
But then I was like, no, I'm just going to do this. This is my job right now. My job is to get a job. Here I go. and then now being in the position, I realized that if I did receive an email, I'd be like, this person's really interested. So I can see it now from the other side and realize that there is value to it.
Yes, because you're not emailing who aren't hiring, right? I mean, and honestly, we would probably encourage that too, let's be honest. But like, for the most part, you're just like, we would encourage you to do that to work your network and people you want to connect with. But yeah, you're not going to be, but if you were to do that with those people, you wouldn't be like, no, give me a job. You'd be like, hey, I want to have a quick chat, a 15-minute chat. Right. I think that's the context that's so hard to understand when you're the person sending the email, but it's like, these are people who are actively hiring. So like getting an email is at worst, they don't see it. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And then there's no harm. Yeah.
When you're hiring, you get just an amazing amount. And then you're like, oh, we need to go through 20 or 30 portfolios. So, or more. So yeah.
Yeah. Let's see what's going on with the questions. So Terry asks a good question, which is, how does the Get Hired track work for non-U.S. citizens? So I understand that you are a U.S. citizen, but I think in some ways your experience was similar to a non-U.S. citizen, because regardless of citizenship, location is actually as important. So, I mean, yeah, I think you've spoken to this, but I mean, the short answer is you just had to find, well, sorry, this was because you weren't looking in Costa Rica. You were looking in the U.S. predominantly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how did you identify, was it just sort of like if they got back to you, or did you have any process to identify whether or not they would, talk about that.
Some jobs would state that you have to be inside the United States. Okay. And so just looking at the requirements sometimes could help me filter those out. But with my particular situation, like, sometimes it was kind of nebulous, it was like, this is a remote position. And it's like, all right, I'll try.
Yeah. And the answer, I mean, I can say, just because we have not tons of non-Americans. The majority of our students admittedly are Americans. But we do have we always have a couple of international students in the mix. And then we also have Americans living abroad. And also, I'm trying to think sorry, I'm just thinking in my head. We've had non-Americans who are not in America get jobs in America. Actually, we've had quite a few of those now that I think about it. We just had someone in Egypt get a job in America. But we've also helped students in Europe. And it's interesting because it's funny because they got jobs not in their home country either. So this whole sort of cross-border work is really is a big part of remote. And from our perspective, it makes us feel completely comfortable extending the job guarantee to international students, because we've seen them get jobs that, the world is kind of your oyster. Obviously, time zones are a thing that you have to take into consideration, but yeah. So Colin is asking where you were looking for jobs.
Mainly LinkedIn. Yeah. I did get some off some job boards, some there's a list that comes when you go to the career counseling that you can kind of look at, but mainly LinkedIn, and what's the other one? Maybe Indeed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Indeed is huge.
Yeah.
Otta, OTTA, Janine is recommending. I'm like, I haven't heard that one. Sometimes people misspell my name that way. Alexander's asking, do you find that being older made it difficult to be considered, or was it difficult to tell if that was a problem, or was that just not a problem for you? You're like, I'm not older.
Being older helps, but
think,
I don't quite look my age. And so that was actually helpful, I think, maybe, because, the company is very, is younger.
Yeah, I guess how is it being older in the company? Like, just for you personally, not even like in terms of how people treat you, but yeah, exactly. I know, but how does it feel? Like, do you feel like everyone's really young, or is it good? Is it bad?
No, and most everybody knows now, but at first they just didn't. But now, I don't really see it or even think about it. Sometimes, like, every once in a while, I think, okay, you turn 51, starting again. It's like, all right, you got this. But I don't really see it that much day to day, or, yeah, I don't really think it was that much of a problem. I think that people are looking for people that have the skills. And I think if you're older, you have a maturity and you've had to deal with life for longer. And I do think that that's an advantage, because, a lot of these things, if there are any sort of personal things, or because especially if you have a remote job, you're going to be over communicating if you're doing it right all the time. And so you also have to think, well, somebody, like, you read something like, oh, what's that, and you're like, well, wait a minute, hold on. What are they trying to say? And I think as you're older, you're more apt to do that than when you're younger. And I know I'm generalizing, sorry for
younger people. I know, no offense to you youngies who are here joining us. No, I mean, I know. I shouldn't make this joke, but I make this joke sometimes where I'm like, because people are always like, how can I compete with a fresh college grad? And I'm like, have you ever worked with one of those? They don't know anything. Like, they're like, what's an office? And that's not true. Obviously, there's lots of phenomenal fresh college grads, but you know what I'm saying? Like, I agree with you. I mean, I think that there's, right. I mean, whatever, my age has taught me that there's a lot that you learn in the process of growing older. So, yeah, I think that's really helpful. All right, let's see what else. There was, let's see. Okay. Oh, so Sheila is wondering, did you explore other roles? Or, I mean, I think by the time you were doing UX, you were like, or applying for jobs, you were really focused. Did you, or I guess that's actually a good question. Did you apply literally only for UX jobs, or did you apply for a different?
I applied for UX jobs and product designer, which are close.
Sure. Yeah.
Just a different wording. Yeah, that's mainly what I applied for. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And was it just that you just responded to UX so much that was kind of enough for you? Like, I'm just curious, like, yeah.
That's what felt like a good fit. And everything just kind of clicked in.
Yeah, I love that. Because, a lot of people, I feel like, will talk to us about sort of money, which job makes the most. And we're always like, honestly, all the jobs make a good amount. And it really is about finding one that you're going to be passionate about, because that's going to like pull you forward and you're going to do the best. Tiffany's asking, did you know you wanted to focus on UX when you started Skill Crush? And the answer to that is definitely no, right?
No, I didn't know what UX was. I'm like, that's an interesting name.
You're like, gotta find out what that's all about. Yeah. Do you want to talk a little bit? There was a question here about, the question was, do you recommend completing the UX course before starting Get Hired? And I guess I will just say that Victoria's asking that question. I'll just tell you just a point of clarification that if you were to want to apply to UX roles, and in the Get Hired program, we would mandate that you finish the UX course first. But I guess what I would love for you to talk about is just maybe talk about your Get Hired experience a little bit. You've obviously spoken to it, but sort of like, yeah.
Okay.
Just describe the program to people and how it worked and, you know.
Okay. Yeah. So I had my portfolio getting ready. I'd done the freelance. It had been a while. And I was like, okay, let's try this thing. Cause I don't know how I'm going to actually bridge this gap between being ready and actually getting hired. And so then I think we had like a meeting and we looked over the portfolio. I got feedback on the resume. The resume took a lot. Actually, even like my headshot, like send it to them and be like, which one do you guys like? Help. So like you guys really held my hand. And so I got my resume in and got the portfolio ready and did the mock interview and then just started applying for jobs, just going for it. And then of course, also I wanted to mention too, over that October to February, early February, there was also like holidays and stuff like that there too. So
that's true. That's a good point.
Yeah.
What was actually thinking of that? Because it's funny you mentioned that because we literally had a workshop earlier today for our students about sort of job searching over the holidays. What was your experience of job searching over the holidays? Do you remember?
Well, it would get really quiet and then there would be a lot more. And then it seemed like at the beginning of the year, there was a boost of kind of jobs out there. So I know a lot of, not a lot, but a fair amount of that 200 was like right at the beginning of the year. And part of that's also because it's like the beginning of the year. So it's like, okay, New Year's resolution. I got 2 weeks to do it.
That's right. That's right. You're like before the New Year's resolution energy wanes. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Do you have any, I mean, I know you do have suggestions because you're full of this type of suggestions. One of the things we were talking about is sort of having a more expansive idea of the job, of what it means to job search than that it, you know, students tend to think, oh, it's just applying to jobs. But as you know, it's not just applying to jobs, right? Like there's a lot more things you can do to advance your job search. So if you can't, if there's not jobs to apply for, do you have any recommendations for how anybody who's facing the job search in this holiday period, like what sort of proactive things they could do otherwise?
Well, I would say just keep working on your portfolio. There's a UX weekly challenge, which is really good to develop pieces. Because actually I was just doing that just to kind of hone in my UX skills, but ended up putting one of those in my portfolio because I was in an interview and I have my portfolio pieces and the person interviewing me was actually looking at my Instagram where I would post these challenges and he's like, what's this? And I was like, oh, that. And I started talking about it and I realized it was a strong piece and I didn't think it was.
Interesting.
Yeah, so you can do that. Also, just literally networking on your social channels, and letting people kind of get a feel for who you are, because a lot of these people who are now in that are they'll know when the jobs are open. We're still on LinkedIn, maybe not as much because we're working so hard, but LinkedIn and the social media, and so we're seeing the conversation.
Yeah. Another question that I have for you here is people wondering how to get their first freelance job. Okay. You talked a little bit about doing freelance work, so I'm curious.
So what I did was the very first one, I freelanced on my husband. So he paid me.
I mean, listen, doing it for free would have been legit too. That's you can freelance for yourself is what I say. Yeah.
That's the first one. And then off of that, then I had a piece and it was actually a full website. So then there was a turtle rescue. So look around for charities and things like that, where you could make a difference. They don't, and you can do it for very little. You can run, UX testing, figuring out maybe a couple small changes and make a portfolio piece on that. And then I was fortunate enough to, the town nearby, Montezuma, hired me to do their design and their website. So that's how the freelance started.
So cool.
Once you have it was neat. Once you have some pieces in, then people see those pieces and they'll be like, oh, okay, she knows what she's doing. And then it'll kind of snowball. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think I would just say no project is too small or free is fine. You know what I mean? And if you come up with it yourself, it's fine. I think, the challenge of class projects is that they're going to inevitably be a tiny bit generic. Obviously we encourage our students to really make them their own. But what's going to be even more your own is even something that you come up with yourself. You know what I mean? Or of course, if it's for a client, then that's a different experience. I think there's two different things to think about. One is demonstrating that you have, it's not even demonstrating that you have the get up and go to create your own project, which of course that is part of it, but it's also just, having to come up with an idea and then see it through to completion is just such a healthy and skill building process, because often there's skills that you need to learn in order to make it happen that you can't anticipate until you're actually in the position. And then I would say the same thing about when you're working with a client, even if it's for free, even if it's for your husband, that teaches you all these other new skills that you haven't dealt with before, like negotiating with the client. The client is changing their mind all the time. No, I don't like that font. I thought about, clients are, and probably husbands who are your clients are the worst. And that's such a good, important, and then you can lean on that. And then that's going to teach you and influence how you do your future work. It's all learning. We're all just learning in every context, truly. Okay. What else here can I ask? Ask that one. Oh, this question is, Erica is asking, did you ever do any volunteer Catch a Fire UX projects to get or something going or similar? And it sounds like you did. It sounds like it wasn't through Catch a Fire, but it was just through, connections that you had. Right.
Yep.
Jacqueline is asking whether you explained your transferable skills in your resume or in a cover letter or in person. And I know we really don't encourage cover letters, like traditional cover letters. Yeah. And my sense is that you probably just did that mostly in interview, but I would love for you to answer for yourself.
Yeah, mainly did it in the interviews, not so much, not in the resume, because that was 3 bullet points. But and not in the email either. I mainly focused on the work that I had just been doing and kind of stayed there. But in an interview situation, you can definitely, that's your story. And so part of your telling your story of what you did before can be how these skills transferred. And even when you're asked interview questions, like some of those, what's the hardest thing? What happens if you get in a disagreement, or some of those harder kind of questions, you'll have probably instances where you were teaching, and those are very applicable. To answering that, because that's how you'll respond, regardless of who you're with.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, let's see. Done answering. Okay. Oh, this is an interesting question from Terry. Does not having a tech degree pose a challenge for job hunting? And I guess, sorry, I'll put it for you. Did you ever get the sense that was a barrier for you? You didn't. No. Yeah. No. I will also say, sorry, there was a comment in chat which was about this idea that UX is saturated, and I think the indication was that there's so many UX designers now looking for work. Is that something that you see? I guess I would say that I have not seen any data to support that. All the data I've seen about tech jobs is that there's always, even now with the tech layoffs, believe it or not, there's still a lot of open positions.
I think it's hard with UX if you don't have any experience, or if you don't have a portfolio that kind of has original works in it. I know that a lot of the jobs that I would apply for would have a huge amount of people applying, but I'm not sure how many of those applicants actually, you know, meet the requirements as far as like what I was dealing with, you know, living outside of the United States. So I don't know how many of those applicants were other. But I remember distinctly feeling, gosh, it is saturated. I'm not going to be able to, you know, some of those thoughts start creeping in, but it's just like, just go.
Yeah. 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 And I guess, I mean, so speaking to that, like, you know, what question are we not asking? Like, what advice? We've got all these people here who are listening and are inspired by your story. So first of all, move to Costa Rica. But after we moved to Costa Rica, yeah. What thoughts, or like what does everyone need to know?
Oh, for me, I would just say, you know, oh, gosh. You know, just figure out what you want and go for it, and learn all that you can. No, you can't learn it all. No, you're not going to be perfect. No, there's going to be many things you're not going to know, and everybody coming to that position is going to be the same way. And let them see who you are. You know, let that shine through. Don't try to, you know, professionalize it too much. You know, let it come through so they can see who you are, because they're hiring a human being. And yeah, it's easy to forget that, like, because it just seems like, oh, especially if you're in the thick of it.
Yeah, totally. And it's really, it turns on a dime, right? Like you can just be getting nothing but rejections, and then.
Yeah. I see Drew's got a advice for introverts. Introverts meditate first, and then throw on the show, and then you're off camera, just maybe meditate after.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. I love that. Erica's asking, would you say it's worth getting another UX certificate, or just going for the job because we can't possibly know all there is to know about in UX anyway?
Well, I've got the job, and I'm still getting more classes. So I think you're always going to be learning. The certificate, meaning I think you need to have something completed. So you're like, this is coursework done. But then I think you need to, you know, you can also look at what people are hiring for, and look and see if there's any of these skills or software that they're listing that you need that you don't know anything about. So if you're going through there and you're like, Figma, what's that? That's when you need to like learn how to do that. Or you know, I don't know if you could learn Jira, but you know, just some of these things that people are learning, so it won't be completely unfamiliar to you, because you could get a job and you're like, oh, what's Slack, what's Google Docs, and you know, just these other things, and then all of a sudden
you're skill crash, you wouldn't get to.
you guys have Slack and Google Docs.
Yeah, exactly. Which is, you know, something that we were really thoughtful about, right? Because we want to make sure that our students are prepared on many levels. But yes. Yeah, I think this is a tricky one. Like, I think that it's like, you never want to say that you don't need to keep learning, or that you know what I mean? Of course, like there's always more to learn. And at the same time, like if I would say like en masse, if I look at 10 years of students, I would say the biggest mistake students make is they think they need to know more and need to learn more than they do before they start looking for work. Like, I really want everyone to get paid to learn as quickly as possible. And that's what you will, right? Like, you're getting paid to learn at your job. And it's totally possible.
Yeah, that's a good point, because you can fall into that trap of, I need to do this first. And then what that is actually a form of procrastination, because you don't want to actually put yourself out there, because then you might fail. But actually, if you start if you get something together and you start right now, then what's the worst that can happen? You got some experience with interviewing, you got some experience, building a better portfolio. Like, it's all good. So keep heading where you want to go.
Yeah. Well, and I think also, and this is sort of the whole genesis of the Get Hired program, which is that it turns out that just having the skills doesn't, that's not a magic unlock to getting a job. Unfortunately, we wish it were, but it's not. There's actually all these other skills that you need to learn in order to get a job. And you could be the most experienced person on the face of the planet. And you know what I mean? Like if I were to go get a job, I would need to practice those skills because they're not something that we practice every day.
Yep.
So. Okay, well, awesome. Well, we have your doc of resources, which we're going to send out to everybody in the follow-up email. Yeah, it was such a pleasure to have you, Stephanie. You're really an inspiration, so I really appreciate it. Yeah, and if anyone, is there, a place where people can follow you on Instagram or sort of keep up with what you're doing or anything like that?
Sure. I'm on LinkedIn. I have an Instagram, but I don't check it that much. But it's like Help UX, I think. I have one for UX and I have one for like the art that I do. So I don't check it that much. And I really need to do I haven't done any side anything. Like, I've just been like 8 hours a day and then, okay, stop.
Yeah.
Oh, that's one last thing too. Once you do get the job, learn to stop, especially if you are working remote. Like, I actually take the computer, close it, and I have to bring it inside and put it away until the next morning. Because otherwise it'll be like 8 o'clock at night. I'm like, oh, Slack. Oh, Figma, let me do it 4 iterations. And then all of a sudden I'm working 24 hours. So you got to learn to segment.
No, it's true. It's a real thing. I totally understand. Having young children has helped me immensely in this realm, but
yeah.
If you don't have that, yeah. All right. Well, Stephanie, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. And we just wish you all the best. I can't wait to see what you do. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.